Welcome everybody to this 30th of June 2018 presentation of the World Satsanga in conjunction with Kevin Moore and the Moore Show and Moore Talk, and thanking Kevin again for his work behind the scenes and the work he's done with the documentary he's working on called They Call Us Channelers, and also thanks to him for inviting me to be with him at the Awakening a UFO conference that we both attended on the 23rd of June at Manchester. We had a great time there, lots of notable individuals there such as David Icke and Eric van Daniken and a few others doing presentations, and myself and Kevin gave a good presentation on realities and different event spaces and how we create them. It was a really good double act that we did there, so we're both pleased with the outcome. Okay, so let's get into the agenda for this satsanga. So I'm going to give a talk on termination junctures, what they are and why we have them. Then we've got a large amount of questions through from the different listeners and participants of the World Satsanga, so we'll see how long that takes. And then I noticed that I used the same description in the last meditation for this one, but basically the intermittent meditation is meditation to repair not body parts or organs, but moreover the energetic templates and or the different layers of the human energy field or the human aura to help move things forwards in terms of how to heal those, and healing those actually affects the gross physical as well. Okay, so let's have a look at termination junctures. It's interesting that termination juncture is an area within the incarnation or the longevity of the incarnation where an aspect or soul may elect to end the incarnation early without affecting the overall expectations of the life plan. And basically they are an essential part of the life plan, and they are a normal method of ending the incarnation if the overall requirements of the incarnation have been fulfilled, or where the aspect may feel that it has experienced enough in a particular incarnation and has a desire to return to the energetic. There are normally 5 of these termination junctures, and each of them has a relevance relative to the level of actualization of the life plan versus the ultimate desired outcomes. Each of them allows the aspect to move away from the incarnate state without detriment to the overall requirements of the life plan. So really, which makes you wonder whether the life plan was cast in stone, and that the aspect needed to finish the incarnation in totality to make a reasonable stab at completing the intended experiences. But in real terms, there's no rules about taking an incarnation to its natural demise apart from the need for the aspect to achieve certain basic requirements. So what this basically means is that, in essence, if we have a number of different things we need to experience in our incarnation, then it's about, experiencing those in the way we need to experience them. Our free will is getting to the experience and experiencing them, not the fact we have to go down a certain route, which is absolutely the way forwards in a completely rigid sense. It's quite freeform how we get to our goals or our life experiences, and those points or those milestones within the life plan. So in real terms, you'd think that the objective of a life plan was to experience as much as possible in the incarnation that he's authorised to have or is assigned to. But what I'm being advised is that's quite a myth. It's all about the quality of that which is experienced within the incarnation, not the quality of experiences. The quantity of experiences. So it's really about the quality of experience, not the quantity of experience. Once an incarnation has achieved a minimum requirement, that being the experiences that they were used to justify the incarnation itself, it can be terminated if the aspect wishes to do so. So this makes you wonder what happens if the aspect gets a few things wrong. Can it be terminated if the aspect wishes? If the aspect feels that it is required in certain interactions? And it's really not necessary. You can take as long as you like to go through those aspects or those parts of your incarnation, the life plan. It's not absolutely necessary for you to get it right, so to speak, as long as you're going in the right direction. But this doesn't necessarily mean that things like suicide are an objective or part of the termination junctures. In fact, in real terms, it's something to understand that, when an entity uses a termination juncture, it's usually one of these things which are already established, and these are the points where an entity is able to leave an incarnation without gaining any evolutionary debt as a result of the downstream interactions that were expected by other entities and with them in certain environments, in certain conditions, that allowed them to evolve as a result of interacting with that individual. So really each of them, there's 5 of these termination junctures, and each of them has a relevance to the level of actualization of the life plan versus the ultimate desired outcomes of the life plan. So I shall identify them in terms of individual stages, which might help us all understand. But it's worth noting, though, that all termination junctures are positioned in the life plan at points where the termination of the incarnation has little or no downstream effect on those other incarnates that have part of that life plan, as I've just said. And that means in any event space, or in all the fractalizations of event space as well. So it's not specifically like a mainstream life where there's an agreement that the incarnation can end, but it also includes all of those different fractalized versions as well. It's quite a complicated setup. The termination junctures are complete in their ability to end an incarnation in a completely benign and effective way that doesn't affect any other downstream functions of interaction with other incarnates as well. So the first termination juncture is where the aspect has achieved the incarnate state and some experience of it from the perspective of being associated with the incarnate vehicle it chose to work with. This does not necessarily mean, by the way, full integration with the vehicle, because this juncture can be activated while the fetus, for example, is still in the womb. The first junction can be initiated at any time up to and including the incarnate's duration necessary for full integration of the aspect with the incarnate vehicle, which is 7 years of what we call clock time. I don't believe that Eckhart Tolle also uses the word clock time as well to justify the passage of time and the metric that we use as time. This, however, might be a popular comment, but it does have to be noted here that although the aspect may incarnate purely to allow it to experience the gestation periods and or the experience of stillbirths, cut death, premature birth, major organ disorder, disability and disease, etc., that can occur in the infantile stages of incarnation. So you have to think of it in terms of the aspect may only want to experience incarnation for sometimes hours, or sometimes whilst in the womb, or sometimes a few days, and maybe a certain type of condition associated as a result of, should we say, genetic dysfunction as well. Remember, we have to think in a different level, where the human condition is simply a minor experience over our total state of beingness and our total longevity of being individualized from our true energetic self, or indeed the true energetic self from the source. As human beings, we see things as being desirable or undesirable, bad or good or bad, black and white, up or down, left and right. It is a completely different story when we're in the energetic, and the things which we don't like here are simply a minor inconvenience, if at all, when we are in the energetic. So the second termination juncture can be applied at any point in the period within the next 7 to 14 years. The first one between 0 and 7, or even the point of assignation of the soul or aspect to the fetus. So that being from 7 to 14. Okay. 7 to 14 years, which means actually, if you think about it, that could be from age 7 to 21 years of age. So it's quite a period of time. 7 to 14 years. It's quite a long time. At this time, the aspect will have generally achieved a level of full integration and have mastered the control of the incarnate vehicle, and the aspect will have experienced education, integration within the community, and in most cases have an overall sense of purpose or direction, how to form and dissolve relationships, etc., and what responsibility means. The methods of termination in all junctures from here onwards will be via illness, accident, poisoning, or sudden organ failure, as an example. The termination of an incarnation at this point of the life plan is only generally actioned if a short incarnation was planned and the desired experiences and subsequent evolutionary content has been accrued within the pre-agreed tolerance. If, or when of course, all experiences and evolutionary content have been met, the guide and helpers start to work with all those other guides and helpers that the incarnate aspect would have worked with or interfaced with had it continued the incarnation and actively worked on dissolving those event spaces that are affected. At this time, the incarnate aspect is guided towards one specific event space, that which results in the termination of the incarnation. So basically, if it's considered that there's no longer any need to be incarnate and the second termination juncture can be used, all of those fractaled event spaces, those different parallel realities, etc., that are created on all the different levels downstream from us are dissolved, allowing the mainstream event space to be used as the point of which we can be allowed to move out of our incarnation. The third termination juncture is really when the incarnate is in the next 7 to 21 years, which takes us up to the age of 42. If you remember, most of our spiritual understandings is that things change at the age of 42. We've moved away from those things that we would normally achieve as part of our normal incarnation, and we can start to move into our spiritual experiences as well. So at 42 we're deemed to have experienced everything we can experience, or most of the things we can experience within our life plan from a material incarnate experience perspective. So this is potentially going into what we might experience as a result of our spiritual progression or growth whilst incarnate. So really at this point the incarnation of the aspect is starting to make headway in its life plan, and in most cases become a useful citizen, or has become a useful citizen. The incarnate will have found its career path, its partnerships, its recreational preferences, and many other things. It may actively, of course, be pursuing them, perfecting them, or honing them, so to speak, to achieve the maximum potential from each of those different disciplines. So clearly this potential is relevant to the evolutionary level of the aspect and the environment it incarnates into. And many aspects or souls never actually meet their full potential, as this is the goal and not a requirement. Remember, it's how you get there, not what you actually do when you're there. And sometimes getting there is more important than actually reaching the goal. So it can be a cumulative effect. So getting to the point where you could be a chief executive officer of a business, for instance, and then only being there for 10 weeks is good enough, because it's managing the road to get to that position which is the biggest benefit in terms of accruing evolution through experience and learning. So it's the journey it's the real journey that's important, not the end product. And it's the way in which the journey is experienced that gives the aspect of depth of knowledge and evolutionary content. So long that is that the aspect illustrates growth in all its experiences, irrespective of whether one would call it good or bad from the human perspective. So as long as it's showing growth and is moving forwards, it's considered to be successful enough to be able to allow that particular termination junction to be used. So the duration of the incarnation at this point in the plan is now fully understood and fully under review, and the desired experiences versus the minimum expected experiences are compared on a regular basis, with the possibility of introducing new additional pre-planned experiences into the life plan. So, okay, maybe we've met our needs in terms of what we wanted to do in the life plan, and it's do we want to stay here or do we want to go? What other benefits could we have by staying here? So these decisions are made by the guide and helpers, and the aspects as to whether the incarnation should continue or can be terminated within the framework of the third termination juncture. There is an unadvertised thought process within the incarnate aspects when in the energetic that suggests that most aspects prefer to return to the energetic early from an incarnation than stay on in what is a difficult environment to exist in. And as a result, this third termination juncture is quite a popular one to use. So think about people who've reached their late 40s or 50s or sort of early 40s, and they suddenly get a debilitating disease or a cancer or a brain tumour or are involved in an accident. and we all think they've left far too early. It's basically because they've achieved what they needed to achieve, and they've chosen their third termination juncture to leave this incarnation and return back to the energetic, having achieved enough of what they wanted to achieve. So the fourth termination junction is any time within the next 28 years, taking the incarnate up to the potential age of 70, this 70 years and 10. Okay? It is at this time that the duration of the incarnation that the aspect will have met most, if not all, of its expected experiences as part of the life plan in some level of depth, and is able to consider additional opportunities and or more spiritual progression. So this is more icing on the cake. It's getting towards being the cherry on the cake in terms of, gaining additional experience, learning, and therefore evolution. The spiritual work being available is always available to all times throughout an incarnation, but is predominantly available when the incarnate has met most of its material universe or physical universe commitments, and the continuation of which provides little additional work in the incarnation other than the need to complete the cycle that they are part of. So based upon this, the period between the ages of 42 and 70 is when those who are due to experience spiritual awakening will become awake and aware in some way, shape or form, and those who are already awake at some level may be more profoundly awake and will have a yearning to perform some spiritual service for the benefit of others. This termination junction is obviously therefore only utilised if the continuation of the incarnation is no longer advantageous, or a spiritual opportunity is not available or has been completed prior to reaching this juncture. So really, at this point, many aspects do continue the incarnation, irrespective of the previous comments stated, and take the opportunity to experience existence in a decaying incarnate vehicle to elicit additional growth, noting that the method of decay would have already been known by the aspect, and that the popular process of decay would have provided a unique experiential point above those already experienced. So suffice to say, those aspects that are on the spiritual path at this point in the life plan are not specifically designed to live a long life, for they may only be required to be of service in a certain way for a certain period of time, or experience a certain level of spiritual functionality for a certain period as well. So really, from this point in the incarnation, the downstream interactions are starting to diminish, and so the amount of work required by the guide and helpers to initiate the process of termination starts to become less, in fact much less complicated. So this is one where we're starting to get towards the end of our life, and it's really, the only thing it's really sparing us from is I suppose those embarrassing points of growing old, such as memory loss and body function, lack of control of body function. So here we come to the last and fifth junction, which is essentially the last opportunity to end the incarnation in any way that is outside of the planned duration of the incarnation itself. The planned duration being the natural demise of the incarnate vehicle through disease, decrepitude or organ failure. It is available usually between the age of 70 and the anticipated natural age of demise of the incarnate vehicle, as just discussed. As with the fourth juncture, the depth of work required by the guide and helpers to apply the termination process and sever the downstream interactions is reduced significantly in complexity. This juncture is used when the aspect has completed all of its desired experiences and has generally completed any spiritual education, progression and other spiritual service it's committed to work with. So in essence, this juncture is used when the aspect or guide and helpers are satisfied that the experiential performance of the aspect and they collectively decide that there is no real advantage in continuing the incarnation, and that it can therefore be terminated early and safely without affecting any downstream interactions in a detrimental way. So really, these are the points in time where we actively seek to leave and move back into the energetic, knowing that although there is complexity in the early use of termination junctures, that the longer we stay incarnate, so to speak, the longer the less complex the termination of those junctures are. So, but it's worthwhile knowing that the aspect itself cannot action a termination juncture. It has to be totally agreed with the guide and helpers, and the guide and helpers of other interacting entities and environments downstream of that particular termination juncture. So it's not something we can choose to do straight away. So this is why the use of things like suicide are not for want of a better word, agreed with, because it makes things difficult later on, and it creates an awful lot of evolutionary debt on behalf of the fractalized parallel downstream functions of experience, learning and evolving as a result of not being able to interact with that individual in these different event spaces. So this is why certain souls leave early when there was no apparent reason for them to leave. When people die at sort of like before their teenage years, where people die in years where they're supposed to be at their prime, and when people die when they appear to be fit and well and healthy, and all of a sudden something happens to them that takes them out. It's all about understanding that in real terms we have a plan, and that plan is to leave when we've done everything we feel we have achieved at a certain point. And if we want to do it more, then we can do more. But in general, we have to really observe that we are here to be responsible for our incarnations and do the best we can do. Some of us decide we've done enough and can move back out again. Some of us take it right to the very end. And those who leave early and endure tremendous hardships from a human perspective, such as really debilitating diseases and other forms of disability, are really making a point of doing the best they can to maximise what they can do in terms of evolution, whilst also still leaving the incarnation at one of those agreed termination points, termination junctures. There are 5 of them, which doesn't include the natural demise. Okay, so that's what termination junctures are. They're quite frequently used, and it's worthwhile understanding that this is quite a common thing to use. If you want to understand more about termination junctures, then they're within the And dialogues around the 12th chapter, I believe. There's quite some dialogue between myself and Anne there as to understanding why we'd use them and what their use is, above and beyond the actual descriptions of what they are. Okay, so let's go into the questions now. We've got the first question from MS, and the first part of it is, why is it that some people know they are here to do certain things, like I do? That's just questioning me. But some of us still have no idea. People tell me I'm just here to be, but that actually doesn't help. I can't touch it in the physical. Then what is it? Is it just an experience that I chose to experience, or can I not see the wood for the trees? Well, in real terms, it's only a result of self-discipline and a lot of self-work that allows us to understand a modicum of what we are and what we're doing here and what we need to do. And I've known I've got something important to do ever since I was probably 4 or 5 or 6. At the age of 13 it became very apparent, but I hadn't got a clue what I was going to do. I just knew I had to do something very important. And I've seen various different, shall I say, images of myself throughout my life, where I'm going to reach certain milestones or experience certain things or be certain things. And some of them are quite benign images, and you think, well, that's interesting, what's that all about? And then you understand later when you think, this is that image. You think, now I know now, this is when such and such happened, or this is when I'm starting to realise that I've got to work on my own more. I mean, one of those images was knowing that I was sitting down after going cycling, and I was in a public hostelry in the country and just feeling very alone. And that was when, I think it was the second Christmas after Anne moved back into the energetic. And that was a really vivid image, and it suddenly hit me, that's that image. And I've had other ones. I mean, one of them being when I move out of the physical back into the energetic, And fortunately for me, it's going to be quite a simple and quick one. I'll have come out of wherever I'm working in the garden and lie down on the couch being tired at a certain grand old age, and as I sit down and have a sleep, I'll go straight out and back into the energetic. So there's various other things I know I've got to do when they're going to do them. It's just that sometimes they are not so apparent. The thing is that we shouldn't focus on them. Most individuals aren't given that level of detail because it creates a distraction. And that also includes people who are spiritual leaders. You're allowed to know enough to make sure you are going in the right direction. Any more, and you start to deviate from the opportunity of using free will to adapt to the environment. And it's as simple as that. Then US has got a bunch of questions here, and it's from some of US's own website and blogs, and gets information and questions based upon that. And the first one is, did Guy Needler speak of Einstein's theory of relativity, and is it congruent with the multiverse model? I'm going to have to ask that question, to be honest. What I'm being told is Einstein had a feeling about multiple universal environments, but didn't have enough to be able to justify it. Most of his work was based upon the frequencies within the physical universe, and not specifically the multiversal model. So, based upon that point in Einstein's incarnation, that he was working more in the level of education that was available to him at the time, and his own thought processes of being detached from the conventions of mathematics and thought processes around him, he may still have only been thinking in terms of environments supported by a frequential level, but calling those universes rather than actually thinking of those frequencies above the physical universe. So he may have been thinking of those environments supported by the frequencies within the physical universe as being a multiverse, which is sort of, in essence, they are a sort of self-contained multiverse within the universe, but not specifically in terms of the greater reality. So I think he was getting there. As with Stephen Hawking, he was sort of getting there, but not in the level of detail that is available to us today. Because even the sort of the average individual is exposed to greater levels of education than people were about 50, 60 years ago. Next question is, what if an aspect achieves enlightenment in one parallel reality and another parallel reality creates additional karma or kills somebody? What happens then? The total experience of both of those parallel conditions is experienced by the true energetic self. And so there is a, if you like, a neutralizing effect associated with the total experience of the aspect as a result of parallel conditions. However, it's quite unlikely that level of, shall we say, diversification is experienced by one particular aspect, specifically if they're achieving enlightenment in one parallel reality. It's rather unlikely that they're going to be an enlightened individual in one reality and a mass murderer in another reality. There'll be various different, shall I say, manifestations of minor change based upon one of them, not the other. Although, obviously, in different incarnations, they can swing from one side to the other side. But generally, as you move up the frequencies, you get to a point where the objective is more to be of service than to just be immersed in the experience. Okay. Next one is, can you tell me please, nirvana in theosophy and the divine regions are what in your systemization? What is nirvana? Along with a lot of the locations in the heavens named in theology, it's simply a basis of understanding that there are higher environments, higher frequency environments, and that these environments have a structure. If you read a number of the older books, to God's Many Rooms or Houses, and and you read about Nirvana, and you read about where Thor came from, Ragnarok, and all those sort of places, you start to realise that these things are simply a level of understanding based upon the educational level at the time, and the evolutionary level of those individuals within that education level. And so they're explained in ways in which people would understand. So, in essence, if you stripped everything right back, you would start to see the commonality. However, the way it's described and broadcast is based upon the level of education that those individuals who are receiving that broadcast would have been able to understand it within. So we have to look at it very, very closely and very, very objectively to realise that we have to take a lot of the modern day interpretations of theosophy as being more advanced and more understanding than those in the past. So what I would suggest is that strip away all the sort of legend and fairy tale-ism of the information and start to look at the real basics. That's what you classify as the science behind it. Next question is, do souls or aspects before incarnation ever plan to kill somebody, such as a suicide bomber or Hitler? I ask because I read a talk about Hitler where I realised that his life was planned in advance, that the Second World War united many people and gave them many lessons, and that confused me. Yeah, there are souls who plan to interact with other souls, so one soul can experience what it's like to be murdered, and other souls can experience what it's like to be the murderer, and in all sorts of different variations upon those themes. It's something we experience as part of the yin and the yang, the balance associated with being incarnate and being an evolutionary ladder. In fact, there is going to be one book where I know I'm going to focus on talking to individuals, such as Hitler, who are classified as being antichrists, to see exactly what the benefit was of them doing what they were doing. But more importantly, the issue is that these entities, these brave, highly evolved, can you believe, entities, put themselves under a lot of energetic pressure by going against the wills of the masses and helping them through being a focus for the masses to bring them together, working together in a single-minded and a collective way. And that's what they're there for. You have to detach from the human condition to be able to recognise that some souls, even though they're really highly evolved, take on board some really horrific levels of energetic interaction to make us work together. And sometimes it involves people like Idi Amin, Hitler, Alfred the Great, all these different people who are raping and pillaging and causing problems to make other people work together in a more loving and caring way, and realising that they don't want this to happen in general, and so they're working together to stop that happening. So we work together in a more loving and coherent way. There's a few more questions from the same person from a part of the should we say eastern side of Europe. And the first one is, do I have any opinion on the Gnostic teachings of Greek myths about the imperfect creator, Demiurgi, the god of this world? Many teachings talk about this. Right, first of all, a myth is a shortening of the word paramythia, and paramythia in Greek is story. So basically it's a story, and any individual that we classify as being above us or who has a higher level of education in these days, the Byzantine era, high levels of education, maybe high levels of technology or high levels of functionality, we would classify as a god, even though they aren't God. Although, having said that, we're all part of God, we're all individualised units of God. So in essence, to say he was an imperfect creator is, because he's creating, this doesn't mean he's imperfect, he could be perfect. And so what it's suggesting here is that there are those who are classified as being a god, or as having higher functionality and being so-called highly evolved, but in essence can get affected by the low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions associated with being here. So the imperfection is usually a result of some level of karmic influence, of being addicted to or attracted to status, material wealth, being in power and being in control of others. So it's all about teaching people that, really, just because you are a higher being doesn't mean that you're not affected by low frequencies the lowest frequencies associated with the multiversal environment. So, and I mean, don't forget that there are many entities who have participated in creating the physical universe and the components of the physical universe. And so to suggest that one particular individual was involved with the creation of the planet, although they can be, of course, is again probably taking it to the point where the education of the individuals at the time couldn't understand the detail behind it anyway. So it's all about understanding that even those of higher frequency get affected by lower frequencies of the physical universe. And the next question is from the same individual. In many disciples and channelings, it is said that the soul before any incarnation arranges lections which has to pass with spiritual guides, and they say that crimes killing cannot be planned in advance. You said that Hitler is an evolved being and that it was a completely new concept for me. Some research says he was obsessed with strong negative forces. Is your concept relative only to such great roles in mankind, like Hitler or even ordinary people, in terms of planning to kill people before their incarnation? Because it is contrary to known laws of karma. The known laws of karma are very small. Karma is an absolutely massive field, and in the book Avoiding Karma you can see that there's at least 104. Those 104 possibilities or ways of working with karma. Some of it is quite esoteric and some of it is quite pointed. But it's again the way in which we choose to depart as a termination juncture can be incorporated into a so-called crime. Okay, so to say that we can't plan such things in advance when we consider such things as being quite a trifle is really not looking at a bigger picture. What I would say, and from a human perspective, this would seem to be completely abhorrent, and I can understand that. But when you look at it from the bigger picture, how do we look at ants? We look at ants or microbes or bugs and consider their lives as being nothing, or the experiences they have as being nothing. Well, in essence, when we are in the energetic, we are like the human being observing an ant or a microbe. And that ant or microbe is our incarnation. And so when we think of what we're experiencing in the energetic and then relating to that incarnation, we think, oh, it's nothing. It's a mere few seconds of experience of the life that a microbe would have, or maybe a few months of life that an ant would have, for instance, if that. So we don't pay much attention to it in that respect. We don't see it as being such an abhorrence. And there's this law and that law. When individuals are in discussion with each other as to how they could use their termination junctures or what they want to experience, karma doesn't come into it. Karma is something which is there as a result of our addiction to thoughts, behaviours and actions, and the addiction to wanting to be in power, wanting to be have status, wanting to have material wealth, and wanted to control others, and many other things. So you find that people like Hitler, for instance, may actually have been protected from karma because of the amount of unravelling of potentially karmic links that would have been attached to him had he been exposed to karma. Now, if you've got an individual who is, for want of a better word, putting themselves in a place of focus, of negative focus, so that other individuals can group together in a more positive and coherent way, in a collective way for a better good, then you can understand that they're there for a better good and not because of what the human condition considers their actions are, and the results of their actions of manifest. So we have to study karma in a completely different way. It is extremely difficult to understand what karma is, and my little book on it is a mere single part of the jigsaw puzzle. And what we understand and experience about ourselves when we disincarnate is something we cannot conceive whilst we're incarnate, because we are so wrapped up in the human condition. Okay, so I don't know if I answered that question there. It's difficult, although we have got like commandments where we should, thou shalt not kill and everything else. That's specific to those who are free-thinking individuals, not those who are included in a life plan that includes a certain termination juncture or a certain experience. Okay, next set of questions are from ME, and the first one is: you discussed the levels of sentience and use the weight or kilogram as an analogy, explaining the 5 levels of sentience, the human, backfill, non-human and animal and plant and mineral quality of sentience. Is there such a thing as pooled sentience associated with the physical locations? By that I mean about things like forested habitats and other enchanted places where many non-human animals, plants and materials coexist. I know when humans coordinate their thoughts, i.e. meditate through meditation or focus group prayer, and use the aspects of triangulation, which I've discussed in prior lectures, the energy is amplified. Based on this line of thinking, it seems plausible that locations amass sentience. Well, a universe has got sentience, the Earth has got sentience, the solar system it's in has collectively got sentience, and the galaxy that we're in has collectively got sentience. And so there is a collection of sentience associated with the grouping together of various different non-human incarnate vehicles of various different types. And so it's not a function of those objects of incarnation, it's a function of the sentience that is associating itself with those objects and the growth there. And I've got a couple of lovely friends who live in the States, and they've got an area that is what I called a grotto. It felt like really ancient woodland, very close to their house, and the energy was fantastic there, and you just knew it was sacred, you just knew it was pure. By sacred I mean pure, and that's because it hadn't been defiled by erratic, irresponsible human thought. It was perfect and had been left to be perfect, and so based upon that, this sort of justifies that statement. Yes, there are areas where non-human animals, plants and minerals coexist because they're used for incarnate purposes, but because they haven't been exposed to the alternative agenda of the selfish human mind, they remain in this high energy and perfect condition. In fact, some of these areas where you start to see various different shifts in frequency and can start to observe different frequencies within the same location. So we can see imagery and interact with those individuals who are of higher frequencies, which means that it could be even different timeline from our perspective, and not, whilst not know we're doing it, but we work it out later. So there's a lot of things on this. There's a book by one of the Ozark authors, where the book's called Twidders, where the author describes a number of different situations where people have experienced different environments, different timelines in one particular location. And there's many things over the internet that describe it. And it's basically because that area is a higher frequency, because in general there's either a higher level of human interaction, frequentially, or there's no human interaction and therefore it's been left pure. Okay, so the next one is related to this question we just dealt with. Is there pooled sentience among the non-human forms of sentience? For example, do minerals, plants and non-human animals that are group associated lifestyles share sentience, that thus actually accessing a deeper and different level of understanding based upon this shared information? This seems more of the functioning of things like plants and minerals than some non-human animals that live in groups that function as organisms, such as bees, roaming herds and pack animals, schools of fish, etc., to utilise a shared sentience, that they are not as individualised sentience as human beings. So as a biologist, I see the natural world communicates in ways we don't fully understand. Swarms of bees, flocks of birds in flocks, fast-moving schools of fish escaping predators, and even microbes grow in swarms through quorum sensing. Their behaviours and actions are coordinated, thus their thoughts must be too, and thence the sentience underlying it. Depending upon the level of sentience and the type of potential individualised interaction will depend upon whether they will have what you would call individualised and autonomous sentient abilities. But when the sentience is low, they can group together in like-minded or in a way where they group together with like types of energies or like thought processes, and so you will get like this communal sense of and therefore the synergy associated with this communal sense of beingness. And so whereas energies can evolve eventually from being just energies that are wandering around roaming freely to becoming fully sentient as a result of natural attractivity to each other, and then grouping together to a point where they start to seek out other groups of other energies of similar type that are grouped together and naturally attracted to each other, to starting to grow sort of rudimentary intelligence, resulting in higher intelligence and therefore self-awareness and consciousness and creativity and therefore sentience. This can happen on these levels as well, but particularly because they would have a group function associated with that incarnate state, and that group function would be relevant to a communal sense of interaction. Some of that is as a result of the need to perpetuate the environment on the earth, basically, and the integrity of that environment, so that we can exist here. So they're providing a service for us whilst also enjoying a rather wonderful state of communion and shared sentience to create a larger level of, so we say, sentient weight. Next question is, you discussed light activation and specifically referenced the speed of light, the fact that it is not a constant as science presumes. I have a theory that love is actually a particle, for lack of a better word, that moves faster than the speed of light, and in my lifetime science will find a way to confirm this and measure it. What do your contacts with our source entity and the origin have to say about the theory of love? Love is misunderstood. We think of it in human terms as being the attractivity between two individuals. Although you take that word attractivity and you start to see that it's attractivity between sentient energies, and the feeling of communion gained when similar or same or like but individualized sentient energies give up their individualization to create a larger level of sentient energy. And so we feel a state of communion. So it's all about feeling and being in a collective state together. So if you do want to think of it as a particle, think of it in terms of energy. Think of it in terms of sentience being the animator of energy, and that energy is simply a vehicle that the sentience is using. And so the energy, in whatever form it is, could actually be a particle, could actually be what we call a solid object, but the sentience associated with it is in effect the motivating part, and the energy, so the energy that it's associated itself with is simply a vehicle to be used. So the feeling of communion, full communion, and the state of beingness associated with that is what I would call true love, and whilst in this state of communion and being associated with an energy, is where you would see that if you could interact with that energy has the assignation of communion and therefore true love. That's one way of thinking about it. Okay. Next one. In your Anne Dialogues book, was that based on direct communications with Anne or your test taking on her form? But since you're both the same test, I think it's just answer the question with yes and yes. My mind's starting to blow. Yes, you're right, and yes. If you think about us being from the same true energetic self, but smaller individualized aspects of that sentience and the energy assigned to that sentience, then it was a direct communication with that individualized aspect that is also from the same true energetic self that I've got. So the answer is yes. So you could argue that you're speaking to yourself, but then again, if you're speaking to Source, you could argue that you're speaking to yourself as well, because we are all smaller individualized units of Source. So yes and yes and yes. Okay. Next one. In reference to what you discussed about our true and energetic selves becoming source entities when we finish our evolutionary cycles and the magnification of power of 12, can we not use this information to estimate a time, term used lightly here, considering it is relative only to human forms, or population size on Earth that will be needed to achieve this? By that math, can we calculate how many individual aspects and shards we reassemble into a cohesive unit? Can we estimate the number of incarnations that await us or our evolutionary cycles ahead for the folks like myself, me as well? I presume myself to be an aspect and not a shard, and a human, not a backfill, although I often think I'm not human either. As I see things from a detached perspective, it makes humanity feel limited, awkward and confusing. I don't think there's a calculation that would be able to be used. The numbers would be too huge. I mean, there's countless billions, trillions, quadrupillions of true energetic selves, and the different variations upon those who create, aspects and shards, who are going through the evolutionary process, and we, think about the number of times some of them will incarnate, some of them won't incarnate. I think from a human perspective, it would be very, 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 very difficult to calculate. All we need to know is the basics, that when each of these true energetic selves, through the use of individualized smaller units of themselves as aspects and subsequent smaller individualized units of the aspects called shards, have managed to experience everything they can experience in the multiversal environment, that they will have risen through the frequencies to the point where they have reached the usefulness of experiencing this multiversal environment, and therefore will recommune with Source. And when all of us have done that, the Source will detach itself from this particular series of energies that are part of the origin, detaching its sentience, and reassign the attachments to another group of energies and do something else. It's part of a new evolutionary cycle. That's all we need to know. The complexity of the maths behind it, we don't have computers large enough now or in 1,000 years to be able to calculate out that, because we've got all the parallel versions as well, so it's just completely and utterly impossible for us to understand it. So it's best not to worry about it. So, but good question though. Okay, move on to JM's questions now. One of the metaphors for frequencies that I've been given is like a piano. It has 8 octaves and we are used to middle C. Courses like yours invite us to play with the higher octaves and then use, and the world events try to tend to bring us down to the lower octaves. Our challenge is to remember that we have several higher octaves to play with, and with that to view the world from a higher perspective. When we do, the lower frequencies do not affect us as much as when we have more choices from which to respond. When we do, the lower frequencies do not affect us as much, and we then have more choices from which to respond. I personally have been experiencing playing with the higher frequencies recently, and it seems to make a huge difference in how I respond to events. Absolutely. The more we can stay higher frequency, the better. And we do become detached, without doubt, because the things that would affect us from the purely immersed human state I like us looking at the world of the microbe or the ant. So we're not bothered about it. It's too small to worry about. So really, if we can put ourselves in the higher frequencies, then we start to work in a more detached way, in a way that is associated with our true energetic selves when we are in the energetic. So yeah, very good observation, and a very good thing to pass on is trying to keep yourself in the higher frequencies. One of the ways to do that is to use the chakra opening exercises that was broadcast in last month's satsanga. So if you can find that, download the PDF file and use that exercise every day. Initially it'll be slow in terms of the process, but you'll soon get to the point where you can do it really, really quick. That would put you in the state of detachment and not involvement, although we still have to be, for want of a better word, responsible for what we do whilst we're here. We don't need to take personal umbrage as a result of what happens around us if it affects us. Even if it affects us, it shouldn't be an issue. And I've noticed this a lot now within myself, things that have affected or have been within my space, so to speak, that would have normally have really affected me badly in my younger years, don't even make me blink or flinch now. So it's very much a case of don't worry about it. If you're detached, it's just something that's happening and you deal with, and it's not really an issue. So thank you for that. Next one's from MO, and the question is, I'm on Beyond the Source Book 2 now, Chapter 2, and it was a big surprise to know that Source-Centered laughs. We humans really do really stupid and silly things all the time, which must be pretty entertaining to the Source. I wonder if Source entity laughs, and then if that's the case, the Origin must laugh too. And he said, if you don't mind, would you ask them what was the largest laugh ever recorded in their history, and would I share with us during my show? I'll just ask the question. Well, the Origin is saying, where do you think the Source entity got humour from? Humour is an integral part of what we are. It's accepting what we are and how we do things, and being pleased with it and entertained by it, so to speak. And there are no decibels to be able to monitor how loud our laugh was, because you wouldn't understand it. If you think about just the base resonant frequency of my consciousness or sentience ticking over is represented by the overall resonant frequency you call then you'll know that the laugh would be significantly louder than That's what's come through. That's an interesting question. Thank you very much. A laugh is bigger than Excellent. Okay, DT said now, I'm working on a question for your satsanga, but I fear that it will take a long preamble, so feel free to edit it. Okay. The question concerns the soul and its duplicates in other universes. I'm going to paraphrase from Dance of the Eternal Rapture by another Ozark author, by the way, Garnet Schulhauser. A nice gentleman, I've met him a number of times. Whilst asleep, Garnet goes with his spirit guide named Albert on trips throughout his universe and parallel universes. They go to a parallel universe to this one, and it has minor changes due to random energy flow. And Albert explains that after our universe was created, it eventually split in two, like a cell does with mitosis. This continued with each universe splitting into two. Garnet asks Albert if there are Garnets in all of these universes, and Albert said that most of them did have a Garnet. Garnet then wants to know if they all have the same soul as he does, and Albert assures him that they do indeed have the same soul. So the question is here, how can this be so? I have read the Anne dialogues, and she said that there are 144 aspects and shards. Is a limit for each oversoul. Does it mean that the oversouls are also duplicated for each universe? Yeah, the 12 aspects, the maximum number of 12 aspects that can be projected from a true energetic self or oversoul or Godhead or higher self, and subsequently the the maximum of 12 shards that can be projected from each aspect is a function of the division of sentience. It's nothing to do with how that sentience is interacts with the parallel conditions as a result of our decisions. So if you think about it, there are potentially a maximum of 144 divisions of the true energetic self, and they are also subject to parallelisms as a result of the possibility of choices of going this way rather than that way, or the possible possibility of choices, or the possible possibility of possible possibilities of possible possibilities, and the fractals beyond that. So there is a difference between that which is affected as a result of the division of sentience and the energy associated with that sentience, and the number of copies of that are created as a result of our choices, and therefore the creation of event space and the various different vagaries of reality associated with that. And yes, of course, if there's 1,000 different parallel universes or localized universes that are created by one of the aspects, then the true energetic self experiences all of those and all of the different parallel versions associated with all the different aspects that they create as well, and all the different parallel versions that all the different shards from all the different aspects that are projected shards will also be experienced by the true energetic self. So the true energetic self experiences every conceivable experience that every aspect or shard it creates, including all of those parallel versions. So it is in every parallel condition and experiences everything concurrently. So that just tells you how big our true energetic self is. It's immense. Something to think about. Okay. Last question, I believe, before we go into the meditation. Okay. So, and the timing is looking good as well. Here's a question for the next Satsanga. Free will. This is from DC. The origin and source entities have free will that seems to be different from our free will here on this planet. When origin duplicated itself 12 times and then reabsorbed the energy, how did origin change when when it created the source entities? It seems that there are 3 types of free will: origin free will, source entity free will, and ours. It seems that free will also is an evolving quality. Our free will works best when we have a mentor, a confessor, or a guide in the physical, sharing partner that we can reason things out with, or determine how to best use our free will. Does the origin and the source entities have an oversoul or a guide to reason out their actions? There's a bit more here. I hope you can make sense of this question. It's difficult to ask and formulate in the correct words. So the origin and the source entities are autonomous. The source entities have full autonomy within the origin, and the origin has its own autonomy of its own. There are no guides for those 2 levels of entity. The origin only being one, of course, but it also experiences its own parallel conditions. But yeah, there's no guide for the origin, and the source entities are asked to work on their own autonomous way within the environment of the origin's polyomniscient sentient self-awareness, without guides as well. We have guides because we are the ones who are involved with investigating the lowest frequencies. So we do need guiding. When we've got, as an example, thousands of senses that we work with, and then we reduce to the 5 physical senses, it's like we've gone blind. So we do need guiding around to be able to experience what we want to experience in the way it's supposed to be experienced, in the environment it's supposed to be experienced with, and interacting with those individuals we're supposed to interact with. You can understand that we do need guiding when we've got loss of so many different senses, as it were. So how is our free will different or same to the source entities? Well, it's only different in so much as we are assigned it whilst we're in the human condition. Okay, so it seems that everything else is collective free will based upon group consciousness. Correct. That's because the Earth is a very important experiment on giving the individualized aspects or shards individualized free will. It seems that everything else is a collective free will based upon group consciousness. Yes, I've just said that. It is very cool that we are here on this planet with seemingly total free will, and it seems obvious that as a result we have a greater opportunity to grow, to experience and to evolve. We do, and this is why, you know, we are masters of our own environment, really, and as a result we have full responsibility for our actions. We can do anything we want to, provided we're prepared to pay the consequences. Yeah, the karmic content associated with being these low frequencies. And so really what we have to understand is that unless we can master free will, individualized free will, other incarnating souls will not be able to also enjoy this level of potentially accelerating our evolutionary progression by having free will in the lowest frequencies associated with the multiversal environment. So I hope that answers the question in some way, shape or form, but basically there are the origin and the source entities have their own autonomous free will of different levels of functionality, ability and power, of course, and we have individualized free will only when we incarnate on the earth, and that of course is relevant to our own abilities and evolution whilst incarnate here. Okay, so another last question has to do with the origin. If the origin is so huge and only knows a tenth of 1%, sorry, a tenth, right, it's a tenth of 10% of 1% of very small knowledge of itself when considering its size or energy. Could there not be other parts that are developing a sentience or an awareness and other bits of consciousness throughout its size? Right, that's a possibility, you know. I mean, it's not something I have encountered. I'm just asking the question because I'm fairly aware that this was like an epicenter, and the objective of creating the source entities was to actually spread that sentience. Although the area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness is growing, its area of self-awareness isn't all polyomniscient. So we are helping towards that, and we grow that sentience, we grow that polyomniscience, the omnipotence and polyomnipresence as well. We grow that because we're working for a source and source is working for origin. But I'm not seeing anything other than that this when event space gave itself up to allow the creation of a much bigger being, that actually that opportunity was just a spark in one particular area and wasn't a function of the potential for the coalescence of other energies that were potentially able to create sentience in other parts of the origin. I'm not seeing that. Maybe I'm not being allowed to see it, but I'm not seeing it. It doesn't feel right. The origins just told me. I think by now, with my ability to move within different event spaces, I would have discovered that. Believe me, there's only one current area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness. That's what I've just got from the origin. That's an interesting statement. So what is above the origin? Or maybe mistaken, but I think you have alluded to the fact that there are other origins or an origin beyond origin. Well, no, there's not really another origin beyond the origin. It's more of a case of the origin knows it's much bigger, but it also, so this much biggerness is also origin, but it's beyond the structure that it is currently investigating in this area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness. There's 12 different levels that it's working with. I'm just going to put the recording on pause and have a look at the origin speaks to just state what those different levels are, because the basic level is frequency, second level is subdimension, third level is full dimension, but above that there's zones. I'm just going to quickly look at that and read out what the different levels are, and then you'll know that above that 12th level is the next group of 12 which increase by the power of 12 in terms of its volume of area of beingness, but that is beyond the origin, really. And there's a little clue to one of the books I'm going to write after this book I'm writing now. This is a little bit like going to a different event space. I've spent quite some time looking up this because I couldn't find it originally, and I've just come back to you guys. So it's just like I've been away for a few seconds to you, but I've been away for some minutes. Right, they are. This is the current structure that the origin is aware of in terms of understanding the structure. It also knows there's more groups like this above its own ability. So there's frequencies, which is the basis for every detail within a full dimension. There's subdimensions, which are classified as tritevs sometimes. There's full dimensions, zones and their divisions, continuum and their abstractions, the spheres of independent planes and their references, there's event spaces and their events, totalities and their realities, realities independent of totalities and their creative functions, and spectral interfaces and their spectra, which isn't light-based, and margins and their gradients, which is the highest function of the structure associated with where the origin is now working on trying to understand this area. Polyomniscient sentient self-awareness is a small part of this particular structure. And if we look at it from a different perspective, the next set of structure is also 12 levels of structure, not the same as this, but above the 12, above this margin and their gradients. And each time it goes up one level, it goes up by a power of 12 in terms of its, we call it volume, and it keeps on. So we've got 12 times 12 levels of structure associated with the origin, and it's only just knowing a minute detail, the first function of 12 there. And it's interesting that although the origin is not understanding itself yet, it is getting some level of understanding because Source Entity 12, of course, in the book the Beyond the Source 2 has moved into and beyond this margin and their gradients level, going into the first level of the next group of 12 structural environments, so to speak, and the various different divisions of those as well, which I can see I'm going to be fortunate enough to be able to communicate with Source Entity 12, I'm being told, along with the origin, in the book that will be called Beyond the Origin, or should we say Beyond the Origin that we know now. So it will still be the origin, one origin, but it will be in essence not other origins. It's just beyond the origin's current understanding of its polyomniscient sentient self-awareness and its structure. Okay, so let's now work on the on the meditation for today, which is not quite the same as last week. It's using the same methods. We can open the chakras by using the chakra opening exercises. So we can refer to last month's satsanga's PDF file to accompany the transcription and to accompany the audio, and you can find that on the World Satsanga tab. If you go onto my website www.beyondthesource.org, once you get on there, you click on the home tab and then go down on the bottom right hand side of that, and you'll see the tab that says World Satsanga. And when you go there, you get to all the archived World Satsangas for the last probably 6 or 7 years. Okay, but in there you'll see that the latest one was last month's, and you'll be able to access and download the audio file and the PDF file from there. Okay, so there's no need to broadcast it in this particular satsanga. So what we're going to do is to work on the templates associated with the construct of the physical vehicle we call the human form, and we're going to work on repairing those, and also work on repairing the auric layers as well. There's 7 auric layers and there's 7 templates. My understanding is there's 12 energy levels associated with the human vehicle, but the top 3, those above the 7th, are really there to provide an energetic step down function, so that the vastness of the individualized aspects from the true energetic self can move into and occupy and animate and experience, learn and evolve through animating a gross physical vehicle. Okay, so let's look at working with this. So we're going to just get ourselves to the first level, which is associated with the base or root chakra, and therefore access the auric layer associated with that and the energetic template associated with that. Now, there's a little bit of confusion as to what these things are called. I mean, some people call the auric layers the etheric body, emotional layer, mental body, astral level, etheric template, celestial body and catharic template. But my understanding is that the templates, these things themselves, are different to the auric layer. Although you could say that there is, with the etheric body, there's an associated level of human energy field associated with it, and that association is also a subject of the energies relative to the chakras that they are associated with. So I'm going to use the word etheric body and emotional layer and mental body, etc., associated with the templates, and then just say that the auric layers associated with that can also be repaired. So I won't give a name for the auric layers. I'll just say it's the auric layer associated with the first template, i.e. the etheric body, the second template, i.e. the emotional layer. Okay, so that makes things a bit more clearer for us all. So let's use the process we used last satsanga. So let's just close our eyes, keep our back straight in our straight backed chair, feet flat on the ground, palms facing uppermost on our upper thighs, closed eye vision focused on the location of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And let's just extend our base or our root chakra down towards the ground from its point of origin, where the two legs meet the lower body. That's generally where the genitals are. Extend it to its maximum size of around 12 inches, or well, between 7 and 12 inches actually, and then between 200 and 300 millimeters, and rotate it clockwise in conjunction with the same direction of an imaginary clock that would be on the floor in between your legs. And the second hand is rotating from the number 12 to the number 3 to the number 6 to the number 9 to the number 12. Okay. And that gets us to the first level. Now, there are clearly different images associated with these different templates. And some good images are within Barbara Brennan's Hands of Light and Light Emerging books. But I tend to prefer to visualize them in terms of a 3D matrix. Okay, and that any dysfunction or damage to them is some form of the matrix not being whole or being damaged, or the lines of contact between the dots, so to speak, no longer being there. In terms of the auric layer, it's more two-dimensional, and so we just have the, like a net effect, so to speak. So it's like a fishing net. So it's a one level matrix. Okay, so let's have a look at repairing the three-dimensional effect of the first template, the etheric body. Now we're on this level, and what I like to do is to visualize all new connections going from the points of connectivity within this matrix to create the whole matrix, being re-established on one of three planes. So we go from one plane is going from top to bottom, which is head to the soles of the body. So visualize those lines of connectivity correcting themselves in the area of damage that you've observed as we go down from the head down to the underneath of the instep on the feet. Okay, and now we can go from left to right. So we go from the left of the body to the right of the body, doing exactly the same thing. Scan through it in a two-dimensional way, repairing the lines of connectivity on that matrix. recreating that matrix as we move across, and all the lines of left to right integrity of that matrix. And then finally we can do the same thing going from front to back. So visualizing just going through the energy matrix in a 2D shape, but going front to back and maintaining or repairing those lines of connectivity between them. So we've gone from top to bottom, left to right and front to back, and that makes the three-dimensional matrix associated with the etheric body, as an example, whole again. And that means that that matrix is fully functional, and any energetic dysfunctions associated with an incomplete matrix on this level is now corrected, and the gross physical form will now adopt the same structure as that of the now repaired etheric body. If we sort of zoom away from the template and look at the auric layers, we will see that there is a potential to repair some. If you think of the auric layers as eggs, they're an egg of like netting. So it's like an egg-shaped fishing net. Okay, it's not three-dimensional, just two-dimensional all round. And that some parts of that can get damaged. So again, just go from top to bottom on the area, and then left to right on the area where that template or netting is ripped. So therefore you can repair the auric layer as well in that area. So by reconstructing the dots or the lines of connectivity on the top to bottom aspect of that three-dimensional but egg-shaped auric layer, and then going from left to right, we repair that net, so to speak, repair that level of the energy field, the human energy field, and now we've got a complete first level of the human aura. We tend to find that if there are issues with the first layer, that there'll be issues on the second, third, fourth upwards, although sometimes the damage on the higher frequencies or the higher templates are, for want of a better word, lesser in damage, because the damage is usually as a result of lower frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions, or interaction with others. So if we go to the second level, extend your, don't forget the horizontal chakras have a front and rear aspect. The front aspect is our intention, the rear one's our action. So whatever we do with the front chakra, the rear chakra copies. Okay, so let's extend the second chakra, the sacral chakra, to its largest dimension of this 7 or 12 inches or 2 to 300 millimeters, and rotate that clockwise, again following the second hand of an imaginary clock in front of us, going from number 12 to number 3 to number 6 to number 9 again. And that takes us to the second level, and again we can look on the assigning again a three-dimensional matrix to the emotional layer. Okay, it's more amorphous in real terms, but let's use the same imagery because it makes it simple for us, and repair the lines of connectivity going from top to bottom, left and right, forwards and backwards. And that repairs the structure of the emotional layer from a three-dimensional matrix perspective, and therefore maintains the structure associated with the gross physical in a more coherent way as well, affecting change at the gross physical, because the second level, the emotional layer, which is associated with the sacral chakra, is a higher frequency and part of the blueprint for what we are. If we zoom out and ask to see this egg-shaped fishing net, that's again the two-dimensional matrix representation of the second layer of the human energy field, we can probably see some damage there. So again, repair the lines of connectivity going from top to bottom, visualizing them repairing themselves or being recreated, and then from left to right. And therefore we repair the human aura on that level, and that creates a coherent, an additional level of shielding for us, and also as a result of the shielding, protection. So our human energy field also acts as a shield as well for us. So we can go to the third level by extending and rotating in a clockwise fashion our third chakra, our solar chakra, from its point of origin. The sacral chakra, by the way, is about 75 millimeters below the navel. The solar chakra is 75 millimeters above the navel. That's about 3 inches below and 3 inches above for the sacral and solar chakras, above the navel. Again, extend and rotate it clockwise, and again visualize this mental body as again a three-dimensional matrix. This is in the shape of the human form. And so go from top to bottom, left to right, and forwards and backwards, going down through this matrix, re-establishing the lines of connectivity where there was damage. Top to bottom, left to right, forwards to backwards. Okay, when you've done that, you'll see a whole matrix, the shape of a human form. And then do the same thing from the top to bottom, left to right, for this egg-shaped matrix, two-dimensional matrix. It doesn't mean it is flat, it means it surrounds the human form, but it hasn't got anything inside of the original sort of form of the egg. Okay, it's only got the outer edge, or the edge that is relevant to the energy field in that frequency. And so we go from top to bottom and left to right, reconstructing the lines of connectivity to create that, re-establish that egg-shaped fishing net that we call the human energy field, and the matrix associated with it. Okay, we can go to the fourth level and do the same thing. Now you'll notice as we go up these levels that the repair work gets faster. That's because it's a function of frequency. The higher up we go, the repair works faster, and also the damage that's accrued as a function of anything that's happened in the lower frequencies is actually lower as well. So it does get faster to repair. So let's go to the fourth level then by extending and rotating clockwise our heart chakra from its point of origin at the center of the front of the chest. And again, visualize the astral level of this template as a three-dimensional matrix, and go from top to bottom, left and right, forwards and backwards, recreating lines of connectivity where they were previously broken. Top to bottom, sweeping left to right, sweeping front to back. And therefore we've got now whole matrix whose integrity is correct on the 4th level, the astral level. So let's zoom out and visualize the human energy field on the 4th level. Again, it'd be an egg-shaped single layered matrix looking a bit two-dimensional, and then go from top to bottom, left to right, re-establishing the lines of connectivity and effectively repairing the fishing net, so to speak. Okay, so that again provides more protection because you're repairing more of the energy field. We use our auras for a lot of work, including protection. Okay, and it's a fundamental part of the psychic shield, by the way. Right, let's go to the 5th level by extending and rotating the front aspect of our throat chakra, which is located at the centre of the front of the neck, and rotates clockwise, bringing us to the 5th level. And again, we can see the damage and the integrity to the etheric template at that level. And again, we move from top to bottom, left to right, front to back, sweeping down, reconnecting the points of connectivity of that 3-dimensional matrix. From top to bottom, left to right, front to back. And that repairs the 3-dimensional matrix that we associated with the etheric template and creates a human form. Let's zoom out a bit further again and see the single layered version of this egg-shaped fishing net that we call the matrix that's associated with the 5th layer of the human energy field. And again, sweep down from top to bottom to left to right, and repairing the lines of connectivity on the aura at this level. And that creates a whole condition, and again the human aura starts to function correctly in that area, and again provides even more protection. Almost there now. Let's go to the spiritual or third eye chakra, which is positioned in the same location as the third eye but is separate, and we can project it forwards from the centre of the front of the forehead out to its 7 to 12 inches or 200 to 300 millimeters, and again rotate it clockwise in sympathy with this second hand on the imaginary clock on the wall in front of us, on an imaginary wall in front of us. And again we can sweep down top to bottom, left to right, front to back, reconnecting the points of connectivity on that 3-dimensional matrix that creates the human form on the 6th level. So top to bottom, left to right, front to back. Now I've got a whole 3-dimensional matrix that is human body shaped. Again, we can zoom out to the 6th layer of the human aura, and again repair the lines of connectivity going from top to bottom, and the lines of connectivity going from left to right. And that repairs any damage on the 6th level of the human aura or the human energy field. And so finally we can go to the 7th level to repair the cathartic template by extending the crown chakra up towards the ceiling 7 to 12 inches or 200 to 300 millimeters, and rotating that clockwise in conjunction with an imaginary clock that's on the ceiling. And again the second hand rotates from number 12 to the number 3 to the number 6 to the number 9 and back to the number 12 again. That brings us to the 7th level, and we can see the damage to the cathartic template, this 3-dimensional matrix that we've using as an illustrative visual aid, and we can repair the lines of connectivity from top to bottom, left to right, front to back, repairing the matrix that creates the human form on that level. It's top to bottom, left to right, forwards to backwards. And again, note it gets faster and faster as you go up the frequencies. And again, let's zoom out to the 7th layer of the human aura, the one associated with the crown chakra and the catholic template. And again, we can repair the lines of connectivity from top to bottom and left to right, and creating this, or repairing this fishing net type of appearance of matrix. And so now we have repaired all the layers damaged of the human aura and the human energy field, as it were. Human aura and the human energy field are the same thing. It's just different words to explain the same thing. And we've repaired every layer, and we've repaired all the different levels of energy template that creates a human form. The etheric body, emotional layer, mental body, astral level, etheric template, celestial body, and the catholic template. And so the human form, being in physical dysfunction, will now totally revert to the repaired energetic templates, removing disease, illness, and dysfunction. So let's go down to the bottom frequency now, the 0 frequency of the earth frequency, by slowly closing, by simply stopping the rotation of the chakra and contracting its point of its origin. So let's go down to the 6th level by stopping the rotation of the crown chakra and contracting it back into its point of origin at the centre of the top of the head. Once at the 6th level, we can come down to the 5th level by stopping the rotation of the 6th or spiritual or third eye chakra and contracting it back into its point of origin at the centre of the front of the forehead. We can continue down to the 4th level by stopping the rotation of the 5th chakra and contracting it back into its point of origin at the centre of the front of the neck, bringing us to the 4th level. We can now go to the 3rd level by stopping the rotation of the 4th or heart chakra and contracting it back into its point of origin at the centre of the front of the chest. Once on the 3rd level, we can go down to the 2nd level by stopping the rotation of the solar chakra, contracting it back into its point of origin 3 inches or 75 millimeters above the navel or belly button. That brings us down to the 2nd level. Come down to the 1st level by stopping the rotation of the sacral chakra, the 2nd chakra, and contracting it back into its point of origin 3 inches or 75 millimeters below the navel. Then finally we can come down to the earth level by stopping the rotation of the root or base chakra, the 1st chakra, and contracting it back into its point of origin where the 2 legs meet the lower body in the area of the genitals or the groin. Good, so you can slowly come back into the room. If you've got some water, please do take some water to help ground you, knowing that you've repaired, if you've spotted anything, any damage on those different seven levels individually, and effected a robust repair of the energy templates and the auric layers or levels of the human energy field. So thank you for tuning into this particular satsang on the 30th of June 2018, and thank you for participating in questions and listening to the
published by them. It'll be
lecture
by
on termination junctures
and
listening to this
March
meditation.
Year,
and I'm looking forward to seeing you all next time when the next
thank you very much again for listening, and thank you to Kevin
is
for
on the
broadcasting it on his YouTube channel,
I believe,
and
the 28th of July.
God's love, a source's
so
love,
that will be,
and don't forget to be of service,
time.
Be good to others, and
so
make sure that your thoughts, behaviours,
thank you again for all your help in
purest
helping to be
namaste to everybody, and
of good service to the rest of humanity and passing on or listening to this
in the next
satsanga.
on the 26th.
And God's love to you all, sources love to you all, and
goodbye to you all.
do have a
and God's love
great
to you
rest
all.
of the day, and look forward to tuning into you all in July. God bless you all.